everybody. Welcome to, I guess, update number 3 of the COVID virus here in Calgary, Alberta. So I just want to talk a little bit about what to do now. So here we are. I hope everyone's felt a little better understanding that they're not the only ones that aren't getting through to 811. And if they absolutely feel like they need to get a test, to continue to keep calling and stay patient with the system. It is totally overwhelmed, not to call 911 unless you absolutely need it. And again, if you don't need the actual test confirmation, then maybe it's not even worth. It's probably at this point safe to say, as I've been saying for a long time, just to self-isolate, but some updates here in Alberta is officially now all of the schools are closed. Large events are shutting down. People are supposed to be staying home from work. The city of Calgary has declared a state of emergency. Travel for international people coming into Canada is now closed. So Canada's borders are closed, apart from the United States. They're asking that all Canadians who are abroad come back home, start making those things, because they're looking at possibly shutting down air traffic altogether. There's a lot that's been going on. So the Prime Minister of Canada, his wife has COVID and he's in isolation. We've seen the chief medical officer in Alberta now has COVID and she's now in isolation. And so we're starting to see that the realities are starting to set in, that this is big. Unfortunately, our premier was just walking around the airport kind of lackadaisy about it. So I hope that's everyone feeling better. I want to start to shift from a panic state, and I've kept talking about being prepared and things you can do to stay healthy and to stay home. And I'm at the point now where I feel like, good, people are getting it. I was starting to get nervous that people weren't taking this seriously and that our government response was quite slow. But now we're where we're supposed to be. We're actually taking this seriously. People are starting to shut things down. That's really important, and that's great. So I want to talk about what are we doing next? And there's this psychological urge and fear that comes about of, we're watching systems collapse around us, and we want to attach and say, okay, well, if this is shutting down, what do we need to do next? And we want to latch onto the next thing, or the next way life is going to be. And we aren't even there yet. We have to really just try to remove ourselves from that urge to find solidness and security and comfort in things right now that just aren't solid. Don't take assurance from the media. Don't take assurance from the marketplace and the economy that things are going to be okay, because it's still very transitional and shifting. We have to really fight that urge to find comfort. There is a lot of silver lining that's coming from this. So I want to try to put it in this span. I have, those who've been following me or who know me, I have been talking about this for months, and I have been saying we need to shut it down, and I've been about 3 weeks ahead of everything. And so I do have a lot of people that are coming to me and saying, like, okay, well, what do you think on this? What do you think of that? So one of the things that came up today was people are saying, do you think this is man-made? What do you think this is? And I want to say right now, nobody knows. Nobody's going to know. We really don't know. So if you absolutely need to take comfort in knowing what this all is, you can tell yourself whatever rhetoric or story you want. The reality is none of us know. I can give you my opinion or my thought process on it, but it's not fact, and it's not... we just have to accept that we're never going to know. Excuse the cute baby goats in the background jumping around back there. So when this first started happening, I thought, it's just a disease. It's just a disease. This is what happens. So in my line of work, I deal with livestock, and I'm actively talking about proper biosecurity and disease management. I go through about 4 different quarantine processes a year. I know what it's like to try to contain viruses, and what it's like, all the tools that we have accessible to us. So I'm pretty well informed of like what we should have been doing. And a part of what I was seeing happen in China and around the world was, I really take my hat off to the people of China and how they kind of dealt with it. Yes, they're a communist party. But they really did act in solidarity while we were sitting here laughing at them saying, don't be sheep, don't put on surgical masks. Surgical masks aren't here to protect you. That's true, but that's not why they were wearing surgical masks. They were wearing surgical masks because it was mandated, because they had to try to stop the spread of this virus, and they needed everyone to stop breathing on each other. They don't have the luxury of social distancing the way we do here, or the space that we have. So And just how fast they were to start shutting stuff down. I mean, once they realized it was out of control and they were starting to shut borders, and the rest of the world was in shock. And just like anyone who's been wearing a mask out in public in North America knows that there's a shock factor, and it's awkward and weird to be the first people to start doing that, because of the amount of denialism and just how culturally unaware we are of disease mitigation. It was hard for China to shut those borders down and to make those calls. So good on them for doing that. We even watched how slow our governments were at making those kinds of calls. And now I'm very relieved to see that those calls have started to be made. We won't know if we got ahead of this for another couple of weeks. And there's a part of me that feels we haven't. But either way, it wasn't until my friend, I hadn't paid much attention to the conspiracy theories that this was man-made or biological warfare, until my friend, who is super, super skeptic, had gotten this and said it felt like it was unnatural. It felt like a man-made thing inside of him. It didn't feel like this is the normal steps of your body just being sick. So that kind of was like, that's a little weird. Again, being an environmental scientist and having watched population control, what naturally happens with population, it's totally normal for disease and starvation and things to bring down numbers. But one thing that's a little unusual in this case is how it's not affecting children the same way it's affecting elderly or people with underlying immune issues. That's very bizarre and weird. It's usually kids are lumped in with the vulnerable class. So it's weird that that's not happening. And it's kind of stuff like that suggests that maybe this is some kind of a population control. You have to think economically too. A lot of the wealth is held by the older members of our society. There's a lot of pensions that are going to get freed up with a mass die-off of the older people in our population. So there's some things there that are kind of like, that's a little weird. Then there's the talk of 5G and radiation. We have to accept that when industry is in control of the information of what's healthy for us, we've seen time and time again, whether it's tobacco, big oil, pharmaceuticals, all kind of cosmetics, like all these things that are not actually healthy for us, but because there's an underlying force. So we have known for a long time that cell phones cause cancer, and they are not healthy, and they're not that much low radiation, non-ionizing or not, is not good to be around. We've seen cancer and brain tumors go through the roof. We've seen DNA get mutated. We've seen sperm counts and infertility go down. All of that is very much directly related to cell phones. So you've kind of got to wonder what's really going on now with the 5G, because you can actually overlay, and there's some credibility to this, that in the countries that already right now have 5G, they had big issues with coronavirus. So there's something to that. But again, where's those numbers coming from? Is it just that other countries aren't as good as reporting? As we've seen here in Canada, Alberta and Calgary, the numbers we see are super, super flawed because of the actual testing process itself and how hard it is for people to actually get in and get tested. So we do have to take some skepticism with all the numbers we're being presented, whether it's being presented to us from our government officials or whether it's coming from, kind of conspiracy theorists, whatever. Either way, we don't know the answer. And there's really very little we can do about it. So we kind of have to make peace of whether this is man-made or not. There's nothing we can do about it. It's here now. And what are we going to start to do to kind of transition ourselves into a better state of mind? So one of the things is looking at the benefits of this, of shutting down our society. So when you've got a computer and it's got viruses and it's corrupt and it's not working and there's all kinds of problems going on with your computer, sometimes the simplest thing is to just accept the fact that you're going to lose whatever Word document you were working on and just shut it down and reboot the whole system. And I think that's kind of what's happening on an economic scale. It's bizarre to me that we have known that climate change is a very serious and legitimate threat to life on this planet and economy and everything. And there was actually very little action. So it makes me think, like, what is this? Is this really the solution to that? Is this really what, like, the higher powers have decided that they're going to do to get control on the state of our population booms and climate change, and just the way we don't do this is to do like a big kill off? It's very possible, because one of the big things that's going to happen is drastically, we've all seen just from us not doing anything, our impacts on the planet have started to go down in terms of pollution. Rebooting the economy and like dispersing that wealth, like, it's hard enough for my generation to be able to afford a house in our lifetime, let alone like our children or our children's children, with the way our inflation was going with our economy. So crashing it down like this is actually potentially going to make things like having a house a little bit more affordable and attainable for the next few generations. So there's some good benefits to that for sure. Hopefully we'll see a redistribution of some of the wealth. So a lot of the people who have conglomerate own big stocks in oil and all, and I don't mean to just keep picking on oil, but there's a lot of other industries right now, travel, tourism, all that kind of stuff that are suffering right now. So hopefully we can start to see some of that change as local economies start to kind of get a reboot, because one thing that's going to be happening here is delivery services, hotels now become hospitals. Like, we're going to start to see different types of local economy come. Building a relationship with a local farmer is going to be super important. And if our kids in Alberta aren't going back to school till September, right now is the time to start teaching your kids how to start seedlings in the house and how to care for a garden all summer long, because that's a really great life skill for them to have. But it also helps you guys fill your bank. If you're financially going to be a little bit strapped this summer, being able to produce some of your own food is going to be a really good skill to have, as well as being able to network and contact with local farmers and buy your meat and produce and everything directly from farmers. So this is really good for our local economy to start seeing industries that have been suffering for a long time because of the bottleneck of major conglomerates. And that's what's been happening in the farming industry, is we've had international conglomerates coming in and hurting local farmers. So this is I think there's a lot of positives to this for sure, in that and how this is going to start to change and free up some of the pressure on the everyday middle guy. Right now, a lot of people are really nervous, but I see this just as a transitionary phase. So don't get too focused on like the fact that you're losing your job or you're not working or things like that. There's going to be some programs in place to help us transition over. And if you're really on the ball and an entrepreneur and thinking about, okay, what's the void here that I can start to fill? I think there's a lot of opportunity here for sure. I think, again, this is just a rebooting of the system that we've really, really, really needed. So I'm gonna draw it back down to kind of a global perspective again on the demand that we've had for our planet has blocked a lot of solutions. So one example would be like, no, we have to have nuclear because there's such an energy demand, we can't meet it any other way. We haven't addressed nuclear waste. We have no solution of managing nuclear waste. And the nuclear plant that's planning to go ahead in Alberta is kind of in a fault line where we've actually seen a lot of seismic activity in the last couple of years. So it's super unsettling. And we don't have an ocean we can just dump all our nuclear waste into, the way other nuclear plants are built, typically on water lines. And that's so that when a meltdown happens, they can just kind of walk away. We don't have that luxury here in Alberta. So maybe a nuclear plant is not the best thing for Alberta, right? But because we've had such a demand to fill the different energy demands, that's why it got pushed up. So this is a time right now to look at the way we use energy and to kind of like think again about like, well, the cost of electricity is going to continue to rise. Why aren't we as individuals in our home creating systems that are sustainable in our actual homes? Why aren't we figuring out how to collect biogas, for example? Like, why are we relying on natural gas and coal to heat our homes when we can be using biogas, which we can produce ourselves and still run our heaters and run our natural gas stoves off of? Like, biogas is very easy and attainable, and creating that system in our homes also helps reduce demand on sewage facilities and all the costs and expenses that go into municipalities and running those. There's different alternatives. When you look out in I think it's New Brunswick or Nova Scotia, I'm really sorry, you guys, where they're dumping straight into a lot of the lakes, and the fecal matter is just insane there. Well, one of the things is, instead of dumping our sewage into the lakes, we could be collecting it in biogas digesters, and doing our own production that way. There's so many alternatives out there that we just aren't utilizing because we've just been in the status quo. So kind of rebooting is going to help programs like hempcrete, new kinds of construction on that, passive home design, good clean rainwater harvesting systems, where we're again not demanding all of our water coming from one central point in the city, and we aren't again demanding on and depleting our aquifers the way we've seen in the States. Like southern Alberta especially is very vulnerable to a water crisis in the next couple of years. Western Canada in general, our ice caps are melting. Like, this is where our water is coming from, and we need to address the fact that we're going to be facing a water crisis next. So it's not just this crisis, there's so many more to come. And when we're looking at the forestry process, we're going to be looking at huge fires coming from the west. These are realities that we have just been in denialism and putting our head down and trying to ignore here in Alberta. So it's time that this COVID is a really good time to sit back and go, wait a minute. What are we doing? Why are we consistently paying into these systems that aren't functioning and aren't working anymore? And it's not that they aren't working and that we need to go and be capitalists and only bow down to oil and gas. We need to transition and diversify everything about the way we do everything here. And a big part of that is having conversations right now with our MLAs and our MPs to say, stop cutting red tape for big business in terms of allowing them to pollute more and hurt us and not pay us. But cut the red tape for the local business guys. We need to have some flexibility if we're going to be adaptable to the problems and the challenges that are going to be coming up ahead. And there are so many solutions right here in Alberta already. And there's a huge team of people, whether it's Rethink Red Deer, the Permaculture Guild in Calgary and Edmonton. There's so many groups of people here that are ready to take on these challenges, but we just are not supporting them. So a big part of this is we have to address the psychology of our culture here in our society. People are so ingrained in thinking in a linear fashion. And a lot of this is coming from fear. They're not ready to accept emotionally the changes that we're going to have to go. And some of us are cracking that lid and are starting to see no, this isn't all doom and gloom. There's a lot of other things we can start doing. So my suggestion to you right now is not to get tied up into debates of people who want to fight about 5G or nuclear or the environment, or don't waste your time on that. Just keep focusing, talking about and seeking solutions and seeking and networking with the people who are out there providing local, healthy, nutritious food, who are talking about good health and not just listening to every single health advice from big corporations. Because when those companies, whether it's the tobacco company or the agrochemical company, they've all got a vested interest in selling you. And when they're in control of the research, they're not going to be transparent about what's dangerous to you or not. And so you have to be your own advocate for what's going on. We have to stop trusting our government and our big corporations have our interests in mind, because they absolutely do not. So we need to start kind of transitioning into that and being more self-reliant, standing up for ourselves, being more affirmative and in our boundaries of what we're willing to accept and support with our taxpayer dollars and what we're not going to be funding anymore. I think big company bailouts needs to end, because it doesn't actually help anyone in the long run, especially when they're all talking about capitalism and then they're relying on social bailouts. That's not okay. The bailouts need to be going to the families here in Alberta that are actually suffering and need help right now and are nervous about paying their bills and their mortgages. That's where the funds need to go, not to big companies. So a big part of this transition is, if you're not sure if you're talking to someone who is in a denial state and is not ready to let go of this structure and look forward to new changes, go back into their Facebook feed. Go back into your friends' Facebook feeds and look back a month ago. And who are the ones that were calling people sheep for wearing masks? And who are the ones that were gaslighting the seriousness of COVID-19? Because that's enough factual evidence right now to give you the state of mind of where your social group is. So those people are not ready yet to change. And I've been on the forefront of change. I've had a lot of conversations with people, and I've seen them go wow, and they kind of wake up to stuff. And that's okay. As people are starting to wake up, we have to be there to support them and keep them calm, whether it's doing yoga or meditation or just hearing them vent about eco-anxiety and freaking out about the state of the world. That's okay. Have those moments of total loss and breakdown, because when those moments happen, we can really process and come to terms with what's happening with our economy and our society and where we need to start transitioning. So right now we're really just here trying to usher people through into understanding that, yes, this is falling apart. It's okay. Don't panic that it's falling apart, but it's fucking falling apart. So that's all right. Let's just keep transitioning and going on to the next thing. As we get into this, if you guys have comments on things you want me to talk about, whether it's sustainable farming, different building structures, different things we can do, rainwater harvesting, ways of producing our own energy in our homes, different types of nutrition, anything you guys want to talk about that's talking about kind of transitioning our economy out of the way we've been, I'm totally happy to get into those topics. I'm a wealth of knowledge. I've been practicing and living this lifestyle for 15 years now. So I can put you, I won't have time for everyone, but I can definitely put you in like connection and network and how people get in touch with stuff if they're really interested in doing that. So again, let me know what you guys are thinking. If you want to get into fights with me about stuff, I'm sorry, I'm just not going to get into it because I'm not going to waste my energy on that. So I politely turn down those attempts to challenge me. I don't need to prove that I have like a great, there was one thing that was talking about my, I think it was like my certification. And I was just kind of like, if you're still stuck in this mindset that you need to have like a piece of paper to be an intelligent person, that's really rigid and limiting. I'm super, super smart and I'm challenged, and I do have diplomas and I do have a degree and I have done all that kind of stuff. I've worked for oil and gas and I've done it all, but I don't rely on that as anything to talk about my intelligence. I'm talking about just things that any human being with a pulse can look out and observe. You don't have to be a specialist in these things to draw these conclusions that something is not happening properly here. There's something seriously amiss in the system that we have. And I don't want to have to gaslight people to say like, oh, well, what are your credentials for this or that or the other thing? I'm talking about very easily observed things that are very easy to see for yourself, that you don't have to come and like get credentials. But I'm more than happy to put you on the path to people of various credentials who are experts in these fields, who can help you understand things a little bit better if that's what you're wanting to do. So anyways, that's my little gist today about the COVID-19 update, is to stay calm and not panic, to really enjoy your neighbors and try to network with your neighbors, get to know your neighbors, get to know your friends and family. Take this time to start brainstorming different things that we can start solving ourselves, whether it's a garden, community garden, your own garden, whether you're talking to your neighbors about, okay, we've always talked about trading and gardening together. So who's going to do like beets and peas this year, and who's going to do like corn and tomatoes, and have those types of conversations, and maybe just start working. This is a really good time to shut the system down and reboot it and start looking at maybe like, okay, what kind of changes, path corrections do we want to do in our own lives? What have we always wanted to do? Because this is the time to do it. We're never going to get this kind of opportunity again. So yay, Canada, let's do this. I'm really excited. All right, see you tomorrow.